Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are you doing? How is it being back having podcast episodes? I really appreciate each and every one of you for being here and for all of your support. I am still really struggling with content, and I'm going to trust it. It'll all work out the way it's supposed to. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what do we do when we don't respond to texts or emails, or somebody's reached out to us and it's not our intention to ghost them. We just don't respond, and then we feel really bad because we didn't respond, and then we don't know what to do. I think that's really common when you're neurodivergent, when you're autistic, when you've got ADHD, AuDHD. And then I also want to talk about internalized ableism, and something that I said on episode 257 that I think is reflective of my internalized ableism. I think especially for those of us that are late diagnosed, we're so used to masking and pushing through and trying to look neurotypical that I think we often say and do things because we're just so conditioned to try and mask and hide the struggles that we have. And I did that in episode 257. So I want to talk about that. The first thing I want to talk about is what happens when we don't respond to a text or an email and it's not intentional. Just time goes by, and it's not uncommon for us to think about the fact that we haven't responded and we just don't do anything, and then too much time goes by and then we don't want to do anything. This happened to me recently. There's a lovely woman who took the online HSP course back when I identified as an HSP, and we struck up a friendship and we communicate periodically. She sent me an article and an email. It's been months now. And I think I just felt overwhelmed when I got it. I think my PDA was up and I didn't want to look at what the article was. And so I just didn't do anything. And the longer I didn't do anything, the more I didn't want to do anything. This morning, something just finally clicked and I wrote her an email with the subject of, "Please accept my apology." And I just explained, I am so sorry for not responding. I value you. I value our friendship. I didn't look at it. I kept thinking about responding. I've been thinking about you. You wouldn't know that because I haven't reached out. If you're having any feelings about this, I'm able to hear your feelings. So please let me know. I would love to reconnect. I just sent it this morning. I haven't heard anything. This may be a deal breaker for her. And if it is, that's okay. This is a consequence of the things that I struggle with. And it's challenging being neurodivergent. It's challenging being in relationship with someone who's neurodivergent. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think it's relevant and it's very interesting. Most of my friends are neurodivergent. Most of them struggle with executive functioning. My husband also struggles with executive functioning, but not regarding time. My husband is has very strong values about being on time, people being on time, people doing what they say they're going to do. And when I have a friend who cancels or shows up late, he tends to be pretty judgmental about it. I've had to work really hard because I was raised to value being on time and what that means. And if you're a longtime listener, you've heard some of the episodes early on with Jen about when she showed up late, how I felt like that meant that she didn't care about me, and it really has nothing to do with me. But even this morning is a perfect example. And this is just as an example. I'm not calling anybody out. I had a friend, there's an activity that we do. Other people come, and the friend said that they were going to get there early because we didn't know how full it would be and if there's going to be a limit to how many people could attend. And I said, great, I'm happy to meet you there early and we can chat because we just haven't had a chance to chat recently. So I showed up early and they didn't. And I think I probably felt disappointed more than anything because I was really looking forward to connecting, and they showed up late and I was chatting with someone else and they came over and did apologize. I don't know what happened. I guess the nice thing is that I didn't go into this, oh, they don't like me, I'm not important, that I know that sometimes time is a struggle for them. I'm in this this other group, and every week on the text thread there's somebody, same person, that says, I'm on my way, running 5 minutes late. Like, this is just how that person is. I guess the blessing, and I'm glad that I'm talking about this, is I've gotten so much better about not taking it personally and knowing that people struggle with all kinds of things. I have things that I struggle with, and I was raised in a way to really push through and show up, which is not a good or bad thing. It just is what it is. But the other side of that is giving myself permission to not have to be like, we have this plan on a certain day and I have to do it. And this week I had asked, hey, I'm not able to do what we normally do. There's something else that I want to do. Are you open to doing that? And it doesn't work for them. And that's okay. And the last time we had a plan to get together, they needed to cancel. This is how we practice flexibility. This is how we practice trust. This is how we allow people to do the things that work for them, and we can do the things that work for us. And oftentimes I do not allow allowances for myself, because we have a plan and this is the plan, and we stick to the plan and we follow the plan, even if the plan doesn't meet the needs of the human, which I talked about in an earlier episode, I think episode 258, when events and perfectionism overrides the needs of the human. And so how can we show up and be flexible? And what do you do if you either have that belief of people are flaking out on you or people don't care about you? And knowing that people do the best that they can. And if those are things that are deal breakers for you, then how do you navigate that? As I'm talking about this, I really am grateful, and don't think that I consciously realized how much room I have for people to be the way that they are in their neurodivergent selves, with their executive functioning and challenges with time management sometime. The other area where this, I'm kind of looping back a little bit now, where we talked about not responding to texts or emails. I often have people that reach out to me for consults, and on my website it says, please make sure to check your junk or spam email, because my email often goes into junk or spam. It's not uncommon for someone to reach out and say that they want to schedule a consult. Once in a while, they'll say they want to schedule an appointment, and I respond with times that I've got available, and I don't hear anything. If they leave a phone number, I've started texting people and saying, hey, just wanted to let you know I sent you an email. It may be in your junk mail or spam. And sometimes people don't respond. I recognize that sometimes people are looking for someone to work with, and they may be sending out lots of feelers to lots of people. And by the time I respond, although I feel like I'm pretty prompt, they've changed their mind, they've moved on to something else. But I do sometimes wonder, are there people that have reached out to me and then I responded, and either they got the message later, they found my message in junk mail, or they thought I didn't respond and don't know how to do that reconnection, because how often we've been shamed about not being prompt and responding. And like I said, if you're neurodivergent, we sometimes have our own time frames about everything. So it just makes me wonder, if you happen to be a listener who has reached out and I responded and you didn't respond back and you're still interested, I have so much room for that it's really okay. I sometimes wonder if I should circle back, but I don't want people to feel like I'm chasing them or pressuring them. So it's just a little bit of a quandary. And I think that this is pretty common with most of us, about how do we navigate social situations and communication, a lack of communication, all of that stuff. The other thing I want to talk about with internalized ableism, in episode 257, I ended up listening back to it a couple times for different reasons. And right before it released, I listened to it again and was thinking about, well, to be honest with you, I was thinking, if I were Jen listening to it, how would it feel listening to it? And I realized that I talked about how high, I used a number, but I can't remember the numbers, how activated I was with my OCD while Jen and I were trying to sort out our relationship. And then I said, once I wrote the letter and decided to take a break, the OCD just got super quiet. And I think this is where my internalized ableism comes up. Had I recorded in the moment, I would have been honest with you. It's not that I am dishonest about it, but now that it's been quite a few months, and for the most part, the OCD noise is pretty quiet, I just forget. And I think I have probably some shame around my OCD. I had a lot of noise, OCD noise around writing the letter, how she would receive it, and kind of separating from her emotionally and mentally, even if we weren't communicating. I think it did take some time for me to help get that noise down. And for some reason, the shower and the pool seemed to be the place where my OCD, I named him Edgar. It's been so long that I have to think about what is his name. I named my OCD Edgar, and Edgar tries to get into my brain about things. And Edgar still pops up in lots of different new surprising ways. And it feels different. But the OCD did not drop as soon as I wrote that letter to Janet. I really had to work. And with knowing that this new episode was coming out and Jen and I were connected on social media, and if she saw it, how did I feel about that? I really took a break from social media, primarily for political reasons, which I'm not going to explain. If you know, you know. But I just was off most platforms with the exception of TikTok. But when my son got married, I didn't post. And I had energy of like, what if Jen sees it? And what if she responds? And then what's my obligation? And Jen already had her birthday. So there was this pressure about, do I reach out to her? Do I not reach out to her? And every time there was one of these situations that would come up, the OCD gets activated. So for me to say that it totally took all the OCD away is not really accurate. I think it's much quieter. I think I recognize it when it happens. And I start getting more thoughts when something happens, like releasing the episode, which as I'm recording the first episode, 257, was released today, even though you'll be hearing this a couple weeks later. And I think this internalized ableism, so many of us have felt like we have to be neurotypical, and that pressure that we still do it to ourselves, that we have a hard time taking breaks. We have a hard time doing the things that we need to do. And I noticed it this weekend. I was volunteering out at the ranch. I think I've told you I volunteer for Ride Above Disability. If you're in San Diego and want to work with horses and kids, it's an amazing organization. You don't have to have any experience with horses or kids. But many of the women who volunteer are my age, older, some are younger. And I was hot. I was tired. I was filling hay bags for the horses. And I just got hot and tired and sweaty. And then there was a work party after the volunteering in the morning. And by the time my shift was done, I was just exhausted. It's not uncommon for me to come home from volunteering at the ranch. It's also hot and I don't do well in the heat. And the medication that I take for my OCD also makes me more sensitive to the heat. I'm also older, but it's not uncommon for me to come home, take a shower, and lie down and nap for a little bit after I've been at the ranch. And it's hard for me to not compare. It's hard for me to not have judgment. And I think these women spend time at the ranch. I call it the ranch. I don't know if it's really a ranch, the horses, whatever you call it. And they can do a full day. They can do more hours than I do. And that works for them. And I feel like something's wrong with me. And that doesn't help. And I was sharing with a friend who I suspect is autistic, but I'm not going to bring it up to them, and was talking about comparison. And she said, but doesn't everybody compare? I think people do, but I suspect that if you are autistic, that's how we learn. That's how we learn about social rules and social norms. And we're always looking and taking in information without even recognizing that we do it. And I had a lovely time with this friend, and a couple things came up, and she would say, but isn't that how everybody is? Or isn't that how all men are? And I came home with this. It's sometimes hard. It's sometimes hard when I'm really great at pattern recognition. And some people I've said like, no, that's not, everybody doesn't do that. But in this case, it did not feel appropriate. And I didn't say anything, but I just came home feeling like I'm seeing something that I'm not commenting on, and everybody's allowed to be exactly where they're at. The other part of that is, if you are neurodivergent, whether you know it or not, we tend to attract other neurodivergent people to us and around us. So what you experience is probably a norm in your group of friends because you've attracted neurodivergent people to you, which further confounds and complicates this idea of this is not unique to someone who's neurotypical, but if all of your friends are neurodivergent, then it's going to seem like this is typical for everybody. That's the end of that rant. I need a little bit more content, and I am struggling with what to talk about. I paused for a few minutes and tried to come up with something, so I don't know if I can just talk my way through this, or if the next 5 or so minutes is going to be filled with nothing. It was interesting. I was in the pool this morning, and for some reason, I have this narrative that I don't have a lot to talk about in general. My life is not very interesting. I don't feel like I do a lot of very interesting things. And I was reflecting that I worked as a sign language interpreter. I kayak. I have a podcast. I did write my book, and it's about being an HSP, and then I learned I'm autistic, and so the book has just been sitting. And it would be very easy to go in and to tighten it up. And I just need somebody to body double with. I just don't seem to have the discipline to do that on my own, which is kind of a shame. I'm working on starting another podcast. I mean, I volunteer with horses. I volunteer with puppies. But it's just so interesting how the self-talk and how we hold ourselves is often so much smaller than who we are. And I was at book club last week, and we were talking about the book and the subject of secrets, and is it better to have secrets, not have secrets? And what I shared was, and somebody in the book club had shared about at an event, somebody close to them, what felt like an unburdening. The timing was not great when this person unburdened their secret to them. But that often, sometimes we need to keep secrets. So this is not, should you keep a secret or not? In this context that we were talking about, secrets can often create a burden. And this pattern in this book had been repeated with the mother to the daughter without the mother ever speaking it to the daughter. And the daughter never told the mother. And the daughter made these decisions, and it created some estrangement in the family. And my belief about authenticity is, had people been open about it, there would have been safety about it. It's okay when you make a mistake. It's okay when bad things happen, that we've got your back. You can come and tell us. And I don't know that this estrangement would have happened. And even though there was no contact between a parent and their child, the parent traveled to where the grown child was and observed them. But the grown child didn't know that the parent was, kind of keeping tabs on them, even though there was no contact. And for me, I'm just such a firm believer in authenticity and being real. Obviously, you can't do that in all situations. And I'm not thinking of situations where it would be unsafe to do so. So again, please take that into account when I'm talking about this. But for me, just being authentic for the most part seems to be the most beneficial, especially for me in the role of being a coach, working with neurodivergent folks, that when I'm able to say, I'm tired, I have a headache, I'm having a harder time focusing today. I had a client recently, and my son had texted me during the session, and it caught my attention. I sometimes have to take my watch off. I silence everything, but sometimes just the beeping on my arm. And I had apologized and asked if they had noticed it and gave them permission to call me on it if they ever feel like I'm distracted. But I'm so easily distractible sometimes. And I want to have that authenticity with clients. And if they're noticing it or feeling that my energy is down, then I want them to know that that's real and that we can talk about it. And sometimes I get a little distracted. And if they are sensing that they can ask me about it. And I usually have a lot of embarrassment. I feel like I've been busted. But it's real, and it's what's happening in the room. And if it's happening and we're not talking about it, I think that's often a disservice. And as neurodivergent folks, we're often very aware of things that are going on in the environment, and nobody's talking about it. And it makes us feel like our perception of reality is not being honored. And we have to figure out, how do we interpret inconsistencies in what we see, which happens all the time. I think that is all I am going to try and record for today. Thank you for being here. If you have things you'd like to hear me talk about, please feel free to send suggestions, situations, provide as much context and details as you can to unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. If you're interested in working with me, you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I love working with therapists. And if you're thinking that you're autistic, ADHD, you're recently diagnosed, I don't do diagnosis, but I've got a pretty good spotter and can give some resources and we can talk about what you're experiencing. If you struggle with relationships, boundaries, perfectionism, OCD, PDA, you're not the boss of me. You can't make me. I am more than happy to work with you. I offer a free 20-minute consult. There's a form on my website that you can fill out. And please check your email, your junk and spam, because I think my emails go in there quite often. And if you change your mind, that's also okay. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's how your brain is wired. You have a right to be joyful, forgetful, ableist, non-ableist, stimmy, non-stimmy. You're not for everyone. Everyone's not for you. It's okay to push through. It's okay to rest. It's okay to compare. It's okay to trust that how you show up in the world is fine. And all you have to do is be you, and who is meant to be in your life will be there, and the people that aren't will drop away. I think that's all I have. Have a blessed day.